Cheers all around.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Cheers, Trey.
Cheers.
Happy Friday. I really do like the fact that we're doing this on a Friday.
Yeah.
We do these on Wednesdays, and I can't drink beer when I do it on Wednesday. You drink beer on a Friday, but TJ, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Jacksonville for the weekend.
Yeah.
To Jacksonville.
Glad to be back.
So TJ's the co-founder of See You Later in Los Angeles, the creative and design company that's working with some of the biggest names in entertainment and more, right? You're going even beyond that at this point. So we were just talking about, like, we first met back in, I don't even know the year, but
It's 2015.
behind Lynch's at one of those concerts we did back in the early days of RTEAM, but through Rob Burns. And we were just going into, like, how did you meet Rob? Because I know that was our intro point, but...
Yeah, so there was this guy, Kelvin, who was an audio dude at the church I was working at. And I wanted to get into, like, lighting and get outside, like, the church world. He was like, oh, you got to meet this guy, Rob. You got to meet him. He's like, he's the lighting wizard. I was like, who's this Rob character that, you keep hearing about? So I went to a show at Myth that Rob was doing.
Open back then?
Myth was open back then. I think they had just opened the whole tree,
so
thing that they had.
Too. Good for them.
And I went there and did a show with, it was like him, this guy Jordan, and just sat there and was like super fascinated with the lights, and I just like tapped in with him, and he taught me a ton on like MA and things like that. So
that was not even 10 years ago. So you've come from, like, not doing this to being at the top of your game in a sense in, like, less than a decade, which is insane.
Yeah, this is my 10-year graduation of high school this year.
God damn.
Yeah.
God, I feel old.
Yeah.
Well, that's insane. Well, so, like, you do much more than just, like, lighting design and everything around that, but, like, where did your, like, love for that, or, like, the interest in that, even before meeting Rob, where did that start to peak, and, like, how did you kind of, like, get to that point in school or career, developing your interest around music and lighting and everything else?
Yeah, so I think it was going to church, honestly, like, to be completely frank. Like, I didn't really like going to church. And so I went in there, and, they had tons of cool production equipment and things like that. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be here, I might as well do something that I really enjoy. And so I ended up just volunteering for the lighting team. That's what I was trying to do. But they wouldn't let me do it in, like, the main service. I had to start in, like, kids service. So I was, like, 6 months in there, like, playing with, like, 4 lights and, like, being taught from the kids LD, like, how to do it, and just in there pressing buttons and trying to crush it out and, graduate to the main service. So I just did that for years and years, and I got to the point where I would skip school to go to the church and, like, help out, and, like, everything that I was doing was to be there for, like, every service just to, like, run lights. So any and every way I could find myself to get, like, behind a board or to be up in a truss pulling up some lights, like, I just way there.
Okay, so it all started with church. And did you have background beyond that? Because, like, I know you spent some time at UCF, Go Knights, for both former Knights there, but was there anything, like, during your time at school there that, like, kind of continued to push you in that direction, or?
Yeah, so I think whenever I graduated high school, the church was opening a campus down in Orlando. And so for me, that was, like, a really easy decision to, like, move down there, because I could be the head lighting person, of that campus or whatever. I got down there, I started, like, working clubs and, like, things like that. And the church thing eventually fell out, because I would be coming in from the club the night before, rolling into 2 hours of sleep, like, unfortunately quite hungover. And it's definitely wasn't the right fit for me anymore at the time. So ended up leaving that and just really dove into clubs. And yeah, I did the club world for quite a while I was attempting to study chemistry in school. No idea why.
Chemistry,
yeah.
For some reason, I thought you did computer science or something like that.
I switched the last year before I dropped out, but the first 2 was chemistry. No clue why, but...
Were you, like, a math and science person in high school?
Yeah, okay. Huge math, huge, like, physics, science guy, yeah.
My wife did chemical engineering, and it still baffles me. I'm like, my brain just does not work that way. I cannot imagine going through school. Like, all my roommates at UCF are engineers. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I'm in the hospitality school, like, coasting. Yeah. And those dudes are out partying later than me, getting up for class, doing all their things, and still, like, passing with flying colors. I was like, I just don't get that.
Yeah, not me. I definitely failed most of my school for sure. Yeah, I had to, like, write a letter to let them let me back in.
No way.
Convinced them that I would do better and then still failed.
And then you're like, nah, computer science is the way. Then
yeah, it was pretty brutal.
So what made your decision to drop out of college at that point? Did you just find something you're like, fucking, I'm gung-ho?
Yeah.
All things ahead.
Yeah, I had this great friend, Marcus, who came into the church one day that I was working down there, and he was also into lighting and trying to learn. And so I taught him some things, and we just kept in touch. So we'd like go to each other's houses. He was at Full Sail, I was at UCF. And so we'd kick it, and we just messed around with lights together. Like, just found someone else who was like, super lighting nerd like me. And then eventually he got an opportunity to move out to LA to work for this company. I was like, do you want to go? And I was like, hell yeah. Like, what's the worst that happens? I'll just be back here in 6 months. Yeah. So I'd never been to California. I'd always wanted to go. And so I just really packed up my car, sold all my shit, and just drove there. That's
truly, I feel like, what everyone talks about. Yeah. It's like they just moved to California to like pursue the dream. And yeah, I mean, very few actually make it.
It's tough. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, at that point, what was your story like once you got to California and between that and then like starting the company?
Yeah. Brutal. I mean, I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 people for 2 years. Talking like all you see is mattresses on the floor. Like, it was just pretty gnarly. Just grinded like that and toured nonstop for like years, as long as I could, pretty much up until the pandemic started. Was just straight up touring, going on as many shows as I could, trying to like build my roster and resume and stuff like that, and just like meet people. And it was a grind.
What was your favorite tour at that point that you were on?
Great question. I think my favorite tour then, and probably still my favorite tour overall, is the Brockhampton tour.
Nice.
Some of the guys are from Jacksonville.
Are they really?
Yeah, a couple of them are from Jacksonville. I don't
know if I realized that.
They're all like my age as well, so it was like really cool to just be around a bunch of kids my age.
Yeah, like in that come up stage.
Yeah,
exactly. Was that a van tour or a bus tour at that point?
It was a bus tour. So we did the US, we did Europe, Australia. So it was fairly big. Yeah.
Dang, you just like jumped right into it. How did you like get into that? Was it a company that you were working for that was kind of staffing their tour, or did you just make that connection with the band at that point? Yeah,
at that point in time, I was working for a company that was like staffing tours and stuff. So I would just get thrown on, whatever little tour would be coming, even though I probably was so ill prepared and had no idea what the hell I was doing. Just faking it till I made it the entire way, honestly.
It works out.
Like my first tour, out of the 10 shows we had, Time Code, which like plays back the whole show, failed 10 times. And every single time it was my fault, for sure. And
did you own up to it, or did you just kind of say, I don't know what the machine broke?
Luckily, they were all daytime shows, so no one noticed.
Oh, okay.
But I always say, like, if that tour had a single night show, I probably wouldn't be here.
That's crazy to think about.
Home. Yeah.
Damn. Well, lucky breaks. Those things are real. Those things are real. Well, so you're back on the East Coast. You're in town visiting family, but I know you had a short stint on SNL this weekend. Yeah. What was it like meeting Scooby-Doo?
The whole SNL experience was, insane. Obviously, just have seen those clips since I was like a child, and our parents have watched it, all of their lives too. So it felt very special to be on there. We did the concert portion of it, so I got to see them while they were doing their like round table readings and like practicing the skits and bringing in test audiences to see if the jokes were landing. And like all that stuff, and got to see the jokes they cut and then the ones they added back in and whatnot. So seeing that whole process come together, and they do it all actually live too. So it's really insane.
Is that all same day that they're doing that?
All the same day, and all the skits are in this one small room. You would just be amazed how much they fit in this room. They'll shoot something this way and then turn around. There's a set this way, then there's one this way and one that way. And
that's wild.
It's insane.
What was like? Have you done a lot of those kind of television performances over time? And because it's got to be a much different beast, obviously, than a live show.
Yeah, the biggest hurdle with those, it's you're a block on their show. So whereas if you're going to X, Y, and Z show, the whole show is about them. We're a small slot on this show, so they have a lot of other things to worry about. We're a guest, so we don't really get as much time as we'd want or as much say in the things that we'd want. We really have to work within the parameters of their show.
Does that like go with design and just, I'd imagine, well, song choice is probably pretty specific for that little spot, but have you had, outside of SNL, is there another show that was like kind of a bucket list item that you've been able to get on?
Yeah, Ellen was a pretty cool one.
Okay.
I got to do that one before she closed down, obviously. That was just like, just be there walking down the aisle and the Ellen stage. I was like, this is crazy.
Damn. All right.
Yeah.
From a live, like flipping it to the other side, like from a live show perspective, what's like your favorite environment, like venue environment to work within? Like, is it theaters, outdoor shows? Like, what's kind of your favorite?
Yeah, great question. You know, honestly, if it's just pure joy, my favorite is probably honestly like a 200-300 person bar room.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's something way more intimate about it, and you know, it's not about this ooh rah rah clean cut production. It's like straight up about the music and just the energy and the vibes, and that's honestly like my favorite place to be. From a show perspective, designing wise, though, definitely arenas for sure. Stadiums kind of suck because you can't really hang anything, so you're really limited by just ground stuff. It's pretty difficult. But arenas, you get the big room, you get to hang stuff. It's dark and it's a lot of fun.
So with that, like, what's like one of your favorite designs, like that you've been able to go within the arena?
Great question. One of my favorite designs. See, this Travis Scott one we just did was definitely really cool. I mean, it was the biggest stage ever put in the round of an arena. So we pretty much
That's
took
a
up
pretty
the
big
entire
accomplishment
round.
right there.
Yeah, it was just this giant ass stage, and it was like we definitely, you know, hit some milestones there, and yeah, I mean that one was just really, really sick.
I saw the videos from some of the shows and I was just like, holy shit, like that is, I wish I could have seen it live just to like experience something at that scale. But what was your biggest challenge with, like, was there a huge challenge getting that stage into an arena with it being that big?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like going into uncharted territory, we're like doing things that haven't been done before and trying to figure out how do we make it work from a logistical load in and out standpoint, as well as safety and fire lanes. And there's so many different factors that go into what makes a show feasible. And so really trying to figure out how do we push the bar there and stay within what's practical, because they build this stuff in a day. You know, it's not like they have time. It's less than a day, like 10 hours. They go into an empty room and they build it from scratch. So it's definitely...
It's mind-blowing, honestly.
Yeah.
Did you have to modify that design like per venue, or is it are you able to stay relatively consistent from like arena to arena?
Yeah. So we had A, B, and C options.
Okay.
So the way the stage was broken up, that it was a bunch of pieces, and you could take pieces out and push it together, and it would still form into place. So in the longer, you know, we did a show at SoFi Stadium, which was our A rig, and we were able to build out the entire length of what we had was this like rock crack that was kind of going through the arena. And so it would get longer depending on shorter on the venue.
With that, like, do you have to, like, from like a lighting perspective and everything else that goes with that, do you have to then reprogram, or does your, like, to those specific, like, I don't know, spots that like Travis is hitting or whatever it is, like, is that like something that like the LD on site is doing day of, is like re kind of focusing and programming?
Yeah, definitely. So that's the main job of him on site, is to like take the show that's built and copy and paste and edit and kind of form it to the rooms that we're in. Some rooms are shorter, some rooms are taller, they're wider, you know, skinnier. So sometimes you'll have a light there for one show, and then the next show you don't have that light, and how do you compensate for that?
Interesting. So are you staffing that role too? Is that like your company sending folks out on the road to implement your design and execute that at that point?
Yeah, so we don't really participate in like the actual staffing, but we'll help facilitate and produce out and plug the people in place. But then once it's on the road, the tour kind of just handles everything.
Nice. Okay. Well, and with that being said, going back to like how you started your company and like some of the history behind that, I'd love to like hear kind of where, you know, obviously you're going through it, you're getting on these tours in LA, but kind of you know, at what point were you like, I'm going to start my own company?
Yeah. You know, I think, when the pandemic happened, obviously our industry went to complete shit.
Yeah.
So, you know, during that time I was doing some music video things, and that's when I first was working on my own, just surviving out there, right? There was no company I was working for anymore. So once the pandemic ended and live music came back, and I did one more tour, for about a year with Doja Cat. And by the end of that, I was like, you know, I'm over touring. I'm like ready to like, I just don't see a long-term pathway for it. You know, a lot of my friends who toured, who are like in their 50s and 60s and stuff, they always told me since I got in, like, get out. Like, when you can, get out. don't get stuck in this road life. So I saw the door and I was just started for it. I was like, if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it now. And I did some stuff on my own for a year with a couple friends, and then my business partner Darius and I got together, and we were both sick and tired of just doing everything by ourselves. And we're like, let's start something and hopefully retire one day. It's kind of the goal. So
what's Darius's background? Did he come from like a similar perspective of wanting to obviously start his own business, or like is he a LA transplant as well?
Yeah, he's a LA local actually. Did lighting like me as well. He kind of comes from more of the electronic music and like hip hop world. Mm-hmm. He did like Diplo and Marshmello, and he's the one who brought Travis Scott in and stuff like that initially. And I came from more of the pop world with like Doja Cat, Brockhampton, and all of those things. And
now you're working too with Sabrina. Like my wife's been listening to Sabrina Carpenter a lot.
Yeah.
In the last, and I was like, oh,
she's blowing up.
She's blowing up. I saw all the stuff for Coachella.
Yeah.
Did you do everything for? Have you been working with her? I guess through her come up over the last, it's been years, I'm sure, in reality, but it seems like in the last like 6 months, it's just exploded.
Yeah. I've been with her for I think about 1.5 years, almost 2 years now. Is right on the cusp of right before it happened, I felt like. And yeah, to see kind of, not only her growth, but like the team's growth from where it was when we were doing, rooms that were 1,000, 2,000 mm-hmm. to now she's going on tour with Taylor Swift and all this stuff. So
insane.
Yeah, to see that growth is honestly really cool and really rewarding, because, you have a hand in that. The music is obviously super important on one side of it, but it would be different if we were singing Kumbaya around a fire. We need sets, we need lights, and we need cool shit, right? And so to be able to help enhance the show and help build her into that is like a lot of fun.
Have you experienced it at that, like, let's just say the Taylor Swift level, where you're working with a support act? Like, what is I imagine it comes with a whole new set of challenges, right? Yeah. Because you're working under the facade of the headliner. So like, have you experienced that in the past? And if so, like, what are some of those things that are like the biggest challenges with trying to fit your design into something that's, already there basically?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're an opener, it's kind of similar to those TV shows of like, mm-hmm. you're a guest, you're lucky to be there. And that's kind of the, I think headspace you have to be in going into it. You can't be demanding. You can't be trying to go out there and get what you want. You just got to be nice and, they're obviously working on a huge show, and their focus is making sure Taylor's show looks good. I don't want to go on there and complicate that for them, or I'm going to get surely not the things that I want. So it's definitely a game of just being a cool person, just knowing what they're going through and coming in respectful. And you definitely get a lot less lights too. They only give you this much versus what they get. So how do you build a really cool show on this?
Right. And is that something you're actively like working on at this point, trying to figure out those elements, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? If you have a truss of lights, that's all you got. And, you make the best of it.
What's because I know that like you were describing with like the Travis Scott tour, like you guys have come up with a lot of like really cool like set designs and things like that. Like, take me through like what that process is like. Like, is that something that you work on with your team, or like what kind of goes into the idea of creating like a set? Because obviously it's the level we're working at in festivals and everything else, like, most bands are coming in with lighting or ground packages, but when you get to that level where you can have full sets and you kind of immerse like the consumer or any, listener into that full experience, it seems such a, like a different thought process around the show.
Yeah. I mean, working with fabrics and materials, and obviously my background's in lighting. So once I kind of, stepped foot into that world, I really had to learn, wood versus metal and this material, mm-hmm. and how do we combine these things so that it feels good and fits together. And, we have an amazing team of people from like so many different facets of arts. We have people from fine arts, and Darius from electronic music, me from pop. And so we're able to really combine different strategies and different methods from different, facets of art, into one, and bring, there may be gags that they use in electronic music that aren't used in hip hop, and we can pull from that to make something fresh in hip hop. And so when it comes to like the designs and the sets, it's really a huge collaborative process with the team of finding resources, how do we feel about things, and really just narrowing things down to kind of a central direction. And then from there, we'll dive in and do the more specifics.
So do you design that like digitally on the front end, I'd imagine, and then are you guys actually doing the fabrication too in-house, or you're out, like, what does that look like? And then you've obviously got to be thinking about like the logistics too, right? Like you're designing these things to be put in the back of a semi or, however you're transporting it at that point. So how does that kind of add those different variables, I guess, when you're thinking about these designs?
Yeah, I guess one real benefit from touring is like I kind of know what's practical and what's not, right? If I never toured, I would just design things and not be thinking about how they get in trucks and get put together in 10 hours, right? So that's definitely, very helpful. Everything that we do is modeling things in 3D and kind of creating the schematics and, the dimensions and things like that. And then we'll partner with a fabrication company who kind of takes that idea, turns it into something that's a little more practical. They figure out how it's broken down, how it stores, fits in boxes, the truck pack, all of that stuff, and then they deal with the whole fabrication side of it.
That's got to be a whole beast within itself. I can imagine.
I can't imagine.
I'm good on that. Even packing trailers is enough.
Yeah.
What is is there a specific technology or things that you're seeing now that you're starting to utilize, or you are excited, but like any kind of new technologies that are out there, like what are you kind of on the cusp of?
Yeah, I think like all of our industries, AI is like coming in and just, either on one end, totally upending it or like really enhancing it. And, for us, being able to use, some of these softwares to take what's in our brain and create actual reference images is super helpful because, in the past, we could only pull up references of things that have been done. And now we can, or you could draw it, right? You could sketch it on pen and paper or something like that. But now we can create really realistic, cool looking renders that, help us sell the idea more obviously, and also just get our ideas on paper and display it more.
That's interesting. So like what's an example of that? Like you're coming up with, would it be set designs that you're trying to get on paper? Is it like what is that, I guess, at that point?
Yeah. So let's say you had like some beach festival and like, I don't know, Tulum or something like that. Like you could go in and be like, festival stage made out of wood and concrete in the style of Tulum with these elements, and you can combine things and morph them. And it takes some time and some revisions and things like that. But
it gives you that footprint.
It gives you that footprint.
That's sick. With all the shows that you've done, and I'm sure you've got many more to go, but what is your biggest accomplishment to date in your mind?
My biggest accomplishment to date. I mean, honestly, to me, I think, outside the shows, it's like the see you later aspect of it. I think I'm super proud of like everyone on the team is so committed and so into kind of what we're doing and are so talented in their own facets and stuff. And I really think we have the best team out, right? So looking at friends and peers and stuff like that and, other companies and whatnot, there's like a unique level of diversity in our team from not just talents, but also walks of life. And, we have so many women, so many men, and, people of all different nationalities and places. Some of our teams from, lives in Amsterdam. And so we're really diverse in that sense. And I think, especially from design, 10 heads are always better than one. And so the more people and, talents that I can get in a room to help bounce ideas off each other, I think the better.
Are you finding like as a company owner and essentially like a co-founder seat of whatever the role is, are you finding yourself more in a leadership role now than you are in as much of the creative role? Or you still kind of find yourself like, or both of you guys as co-founders as like kind of creative officers in a sense? Like what does that look like within a creative company? Because I feel like it's got to be kind of that fine line of like business development and leadership and actually being able to tap into the creative side of yourself and what you've done for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think you kind of nailed it, right? So much of my job now is not just designing, it's, leading people and also just helping navigate this team through the waters of this music industry, right? Which can be so murky and can be difficult and, things like that. And so much of what I've had to do now is, how do you manage people? And it's a work in progress, it's a totally different thing, right? And so I think, most of my time now isn't really focused on necessarily becoming a better designer or learning new softwares and things like that, but it's really, how do I pull in resources and make sure the team is supported and, that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's a different kind of beast at this point. Yeah. Like I compare it to what we're doing, and I still produce a few events a year, where I'm really tapping into what I do and what I love to do. But it's reading so much about leadership and trying to figure out how to like guide the team to be the most efficient and effective, and
lots of books,
teach people like that. I don't like, are you finding that you've got obviously a very talented team. So are you learning, from them too, from like a technology standpoint, or things that you're like, holy shit, like this exists, is that like a common,
for sure,
you find that every day?
Yeah. I mean, each person on the team kind of has their own specialty and stuff and thinks about things differently. And so just learning how they think and the things that they'll catch and notice because of their specialty that would just go right over my head. And I'm like, oh wow. Like that's kind of crazy that you could even notice that thing. So it's definitely a lot of that.
And it's interesting too, you have this like international team, which is got to be, just a challenge within itself. Like you're working across like time zone in LA and time zone in Amsterdam. But I know last time we had lunch, you were talking about the reasoning behind that. And I found that so interesting. So it's like, walk us through like, not just the reason of why you have a team in Europe, but like how it's been helpful to your business as you get, short turnaround times and things like that.
I mean, in music, stuff moves really quick, right? So, you got to be able to either roll with it or, pick something else, I guess. And so, having the team in Amsterdam is great because, like we talked about last time, we get this 24-hour, work period of when we're done here, we can pass things off to the team in Amsterdam and they can work on it. And then when we wake up, they have notes and things like that they've left and we can pick it back up. So we kind of have this revolving cycle. And then, also just the team over there and kind of the art and stuff that they're surrounded by. Mm-hmm. And Europe is way better than it is here. Their culture is all about art and, history and architecture and things like that. So the insight you get from that too is also just completely invaluable.
Something that we were thinking about on that 24-hour work cycle, if you're working on a creative element, it's like, how is it that you're keeping a consistent kind of like end goal, to where like when you hand it off at night, it doesn't get derailed overnight in the sense of like, what kind of tools or like how do you guys keep that kind of train, moving down the right path, like in a 24-hour period? Yeah.
I mean, I think we're very particular about who we bring on the team as well, right? We want to work with people who kind of understand creatively where our heads are at. Mm-hmm. So there isn't a whole lot of, talking on getting us on the same page. We can kind of share references and we typically work off like a mood board or some sort of like creative Bible that we can always go back to and be like, does this fit within this world we're trying to create? No? Okay, we'll scrap that idea. Or yes, cool, it works. And so, yeah, I think it's a mixture of, the people we pick just really, we're all on the same page, right? And then just having like a guiding document that keeps us there.
Have you gotten yourself in a situation where you're like, you've had to just scrap a project entirely and you're like in that tight window where you're like, shit, we're going to start from scratch like 5 days out or something crazy where you just have to start over?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of revisions and things like that. And, a lot of ideas come up as the creative process is moving along. Sometimes as you get towards the end of, a show being built, you kind of get this crazy idea of like, oh, what if we did this? And then you just figure out how to execute that. But I mean, sometimes the short time frames are nice because they also don't allow for many revisions, right? It's kind of,
creative process.
We have 5 days, you get what you get, so that sometimes helps. Isn't always, the best way, I guess, to get like the best product, but sometimes you just don't have time for those things.
And I do feel like sometimes when creatives get too much time, it causes too many questions.
It could always be better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. With that, like, do you feel like are you working collaboratively with artists a lot of times in these designs, or do they give you kind of like, hey, we want to do something like this? Or I guess like how much input and kind of day-to-day input in a sense are coming from like the artist side of things?
Yeah, it's kind of give or take. Some artists are really okay with just hiring up, a team and want to focus on their side of the art and just let it happen. There's others, I would say majority of the time, they want to be involved, right? Like they're investing thousands of dollars of their own money into this. This is their career and their dream as well. So, it's only expected that they would want a hand in it. And so I think a big thing that we try to do that's different than a lot of other, design houses and stuff, it's like, we designed our whole process to be collaborative, right? At the end of the day, this isn't the TJ show. This isn't the Darius show or the See You Later show. We're here to help take what this person is doing in their artistry and enhance it, right? And so, the process we go about is, really collaborative with them. narrowing down with them kind of we basically show them the ideas that we like. We allow them to pick kind of which ones they like, and from there we can narrow things down and get it to a place where we're all kind of on the same page.
Do you have any like tools or technologies that you use from like a project management standpoint that you like for kind of that collaborative effort when it goes to working with the artist, or is it more organic of like presentations and things like that?
Yeah, it's more organic, I would say, outside of things like Frame.io and like the typical just look at this link of this video software. It's really organic of making decks that are really curated to even the cover pages and the colors. I want them when they open this deck to feel what the show is going to feel like. So we brand each deck, particular to the client. It's not like a see you later branded deck. It's, it's for the so-and-so show. And so we use all the elements from there, and that's kind of our medium of, the ideas.
Is there a show, project, festival, something that like is coming up in fall or next year that you're most excited about?
Yeah, this Missy tour is definitely like a huge one. My mom like loved Missy Elliott growing up. I remember walking around the house at like 3 or 4 years old and like Get Your Freak On is playing in the background. My mom's like dancing, doing dishes and stuff like that. Like, so that to me is it hits such a nostalgic point, like in my heart, it's a little more special to me because of that.
That's sick. The closest show to here, I think, is Tampa, right? Or
I'm not sure.
I keep seeing the ads for Tampa, so that's my maybe the assumption there. But
Florida's always a tough one.
Yeah, it's a weird market as we know.
Yeah.
But, that's sick. Going to the festival perspective, I know we've probably had this discussion before, but is there from kind of like the artist or crew perspective, is there a favorite festival that you've worked on?
Yeah, I think to attend Hangout Fest is like dope. Like the hospitality there, and it's kind of known in the industry as like if you get invited to Hangout Fest, you're gonna stay the whole weekend and like chill, because they have like artist catering where they bring in like oysters and clams and fresh caught seafood, and they have a private beach for us, and they really make it a vibe, and you're just there to hang out and have fun. There's other festivals where like they don't give you anything and you're just pretty much like a normal person, which is totally fine, but there's definitely something about like the Hangout Fest that's just a great vibe to be at.
It's funny like you say that, because I think we interviewed Tyler like a month ago, and he was an agent at the time, and we interviewed him. We were like, what's your favorite festival? The same thing for almost the same exact reasons. But it's such a, I haven't been, it's on my list, but anytime there's a festival on a beach, you can't really go wrong with that.
Can't go wrong.
That's wild. So like, what is of all the artists that you've worked with that you're willing to share, what's like one of the crazier moments or stories that you've experienced either out on the road or just through the design process?
Yeah. Okay. A crazy road story. That's a really good one. What would be, I guess this isn't really like a good one in a sense. It was a terrible thing to go through, but it was pretty crazy. We were doing the Indianapolis, one of the football games they do. There was some sort of national championship thing a couple years ago. It was a free concert. It was with Doja Cat. This is in her prime, so everyone's like freaking out and wants to see. And this kid comes up and says he has a bomb and he has a backpack. And turns out he was doing this whole thing just to disperse the crowd so that he could get a free ticket to get in. And so we had to stop the show. I'm like texting my parents being like, we're on like a lockdown, all this stuff. And yeah, it was like definitely a freaky thing. It's always like, you hear about those things in music. I have friends who have been at some of these terrible things that have happened. And so you're just always in the back of your head, like,
yeah, that's insane. Like people are absolutely batshit crazy.
Yeah, we have to have basically like an oh shit button in our like lighting console file where like if you double tap it twice, it locks all the lights in the ceiling at full bright, and then you can tap this and run. So it's like crazy that,
just turn house lights on.
We got to have these safety measures in there just in case, but it's always in the back of your head.
Yeah, and it's like the a part of the industry that I think most people from a like attendee standpoint maybe think about, but like I feel like runs through probably everybody's head, from the person on stage to all of the crew involved. How, when you're designing these shows outside of that like trigger, is there things that you're having to like look out for or design? Absolutely. From like, you talked about fire lanes, but even like medical emergencies, seizure. I mean, obviously with that much lighting, like are you having to kind of think through that with the team from a safety protocol standpoint?
For sure. It's really sad. I mean, there's always people who, suffer from seizures and stuff like that. And there's some people who don't know that they have that problem, and light obviously, triggers that. And there's been, quite a few shows where that's definitely happened. But the tours usually have like really strict protocols on like what to do and how to stop a show and get, med staff out there like safely to get people in and out. So it really falls on the responsibility of us of like, in those moments, timing is really important and how quick you get to people and help them and stuff. Right. And so everyone on the tour knows exactly what to do in situations like that. We're all wearing comms and walkies, and we have codes that run through everyone's walkies if something like that happens.
Yeah, it's an interesting, unfortunate but necessary thing that has to be done just in the sake of safety in the masses. What is one of the more like the craziest places that you've done a show? Like I know we've talked about your time in India.
Yeah, India was sick.
Like what was that like?
India was so dope. I mean, it was my first time in Asia, and Asia's been kind of like the number one on my list for practically my whole life. I've always wanted to I wanted to move to China when I was at a high school, Japan, I want to backpack through Vietnam, so India, to make that, the first one was really cool. And the people there were so hospitable, some of the nicest people I've ever met. They took me out to their favorite lunch spot, were asking me for my Instagram to stay up to date, and just such great vibes. India was definitely one of the coolest places.
I can't even imagine. I've never been. It's on my list. It's my favorite food.
It's so good.
I love Indian food.
Yeah.
So I've got to go at some point. But would you, outside of that, just a crazy show experience? Is there a place that you've been able to either just see a show or be a part of a show that you're like, man, this was probably somewhere I never expected to end up?
Yeah, I mean, Travis Scott, we did the Coliseum show right outside the Coliseum, which it'll be the last show, non-opera, to ever be at the Coliseum, because we unfortunately caused a mini earthquake right in front of the Coliseum, which was not good in front of ancient ruins, right, that are leaning already and, kind of not in, the greatest structural, state.
It lasted this long.
It lasted this long, and we almost took it down. So, luckily that did not happen.
Just from the sheer force of his fans jumping.
Yeah. Just the energy at his shows is probably the most intense love energy I've ever seen at a show.
That's crazy to think about. You hear about it. I've never personally seen the show, and it's you just hear about how wild it is. Yeah. And I'm I don't know if I can handle it. Maybe I'm too old for it now.
It's super intense, but it's really cool.
Would you equate that to maybe growing up where you're at an emo show where I mean it's different, I do understand, but just the energy of how much people are moving in the crowds and
for sure.
I don't want to call it aggressive, but because it's just, I think, nature of music, punk music, or to me that almost equates to modern day punk music in a way.
I mean, I grew up in kind of the whole screamo era and things like that. So I remember going to the Pit. Yeah, over here,
where I played my first show was the Pit.
Over here next to Regal and stuff, and people are just wailing their arms and punching and things like that. And I think that's just a part of the gig.
Yeah. I always like to ask, you're from Jacksonville, so it's what do you hope to see, for North Florida, in the sense of entertainment, the progression here? Is there something that you're man, I would love to try and make this happen in Northeast Florida or for Jacksonville? Yeah.
I mean, I think, so much of us when we're growing up, we hear about legends who have came from here, right? It's Leonard Skinner and all these other people and stuff. And, I think given that's such a huge part of our culture, and you go to the beaches and there's always live music playing and stuff, I think, when I was in high school and stuff like that, growing up here, I heard them about cutting band programs and all this stuff. And to me, that's really sad from a city that, so many people are proud of the music that comes from here and kind of the culture that we do have. I think, I would love to see, North Florida and Jacksonville just investing in the arts more. Because, so many people who are from here are really passionate about here as well. And so, I think if there's more programs and just showing, I think, kids like me 10 years ago, that this is an opportunity, out there, and that people do this for a living. And if you want to go be a, costume maker, there's people out there who make fantastic money doing sick stuff, and all they do is make costumes. They're doing what they love every day. And that's a pathway that's open to literally everyone. I think if more people just knew that, that would be great.
I know that's amazing that you say that, because it is music has led me to where we're at now, and I feel like being able to give back and having like, you know, it teaches discipline, it teaches so many things, but it also just is so much fun.
Yeah,
it's like playing music, being a part of that creative process
makes life worth living a little bit.
Yeah,
you know?
like we are fortunate in the fact that we work in an industry where we get to make people smile, or hopefully we're making them smile every day, and there's something to be said about that, and making the world a better place through it. But thanks for joining us today. Stopping by. Welcome back to Jacksonville for the weekend. Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.